So having trained in the Zen tradition for 8 years in a silent, very strict monastery, strict in terms of how the training was approached, there was incredible benefit from learning to focus the attention, specifically anchor it in the way that I was accustomed to, meaning what was appropriate in that setting, in that context, in that context. It wasn't until after that monastic training that I saw how much my approach to focusing the attention lacked love. I benefited at the time from the discipline. I needed the discipline. I felt that my mind was pretty wild, and there was some benefit to having the focus that was offered there. And every time I showed up for the cushion, there was a lot of someone coming to the cushion with some effort. I was writing about this recently on the website. We have a new page called Presence Collective because this is a new direction for the nonprofit. I was writing about how I saw myself a little bit like a samurai. Like I'm here to like slice these demons in my life. I'm here to, clean up my karma. And there was a lot of work in it, and I was keeping in place, from that perspective, I was keeping in place a very specific aspect of the personality that I didn't see clearly. And I would say that in general, what I didn't know was lacking from my practice was a generosity of heart or love. So one of the reasons I started tonight by saying just for play is I'm not necessarily suggesting this be the way that you approach meditation from here on out, but it's been transformative for me to have something like be an anchor. So there's still some familiarity to how in a sit like this, it might feel to have something in a sense to ground into the way that all concentration practices do. But in my own experience, that coming into being has been like being able to rest into a loving openness that has a very different quality than I need to, even though my language internally was very subtle around this, I wanted to clear the mind. I wanted to be able to hone my attention such that I wasn't distracted by these other things in the same way. Again, this sort of efforting. This perspective which I find lends itself easily, it's not inherent, but it lends itself easily to a sense of, am I getting better at that through my meditation practice? How many people know that experience of you've been sitting a while and then you have a check-in with yourself about like, is my focus better than it used to be? Was it just me? Yeah. Okay, not alone there. And in a way that approach, for me, it can maintain this idea that there's something I'm working on. It's a project. There's somewhere I'm going. There's someone who's going there. And in my own background, I'm able to see, like, it's not bad or wrong when I fall into that. And I've learned that I tend to want to practice what I love. And it's easy to love resting in our own true nature. It can be a little harder to love feeling like we need to focus better, we need to be more disciplined, we need to try a little harder, we should be sitting more. What else? How else would you fill in the blank? What else feeds that sense of I need to, or what's your evolved spiritual language for this? Yeah.
I don't know, I guess my reaction a little bit is I kind of feel like starting out, or having done this for just a couple of years at this point, it kind of feels like I still want to have a little bit of discipline.
Yeah.
I don't know, I guess my reaction is, I don't know, it was a really nice sit for me. Mm-hmm. I really like that. But I guess I wonder, do you kind of reach a certain point where you've established a certain level of concentration or discipline or something like that, where you're able to open up and loosen things a little bit more, or would you kind of say that this sort of awareness practice is like broadly applicable to beginners as well?
Well, in my own experience, like I said, I had a concentration practice for years and years in a very formal way. And in our high school curriculum, when we're working with teenagers, we teach breath, then sound, then body. And so I want to be very clear. This was play tonight because I knew it was a group of people that had an established practice. No one raised their hand and said they're new to meditation. I think there is tremendous value to all concentration practices. I'm simply inviting what I thought could be a fun new practice, and maybe for some of you it's not new at all, or maybe some of you just have tremendous resistance to it, which is fine too. But a practice which might be a nice tool in your tool belt as well. And it's the tool of yourself. So why not have concentration practices where I know how to direct my attention, right? We're sunk. If we don't know how to direct our attention, then it's hard to begin anywhere. So again, I'm making an assumption that everyone in this room already knows how to direct their attention to the present moment. But it's really helpful to have basic concentration practices that support that. And why not also have something in the tool belt that invites us into an experience that's not coming at meditation from the exact same way that we're habituated to come from, just as another offering, another way. Something that doesn't exclude concentration practices by any means. What do you think?
I like that, yeah.
Yeah, great. Yes?
As a beginner, this was very valuable for me. I think when I started out, being present was kind of being on a balance beam. It was easy to kind of lose it. And then getting a little bit more skillful, it's more like a rocking chair. But having this approach being more like this carpet of well-being that's woven through the universe is really a powerful, lovely way to approach this. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Something that I like about it that is different than if you, for example, let's say you just dive into a completely non-dual setting. Someone might say, well, recognize yourself as awareness, know yourself as awareness. And I think for some people, it's easy to feel a little lost in that and like, well, what am I really, what is this? What I like about this recognition of being is that it can be an anchor. It's a large anchor, but it can be an anchor. And it's an anchor that rather than maybe has a real solid fixed sense that, like you're saying, you mentioned a great analogy of a balance beam. There's some anchors which might feel like we're on it, then we fall off it. We're on it, then we fall off it. Which, when we're approaching meditation through that lens, we do. We're on and we're off and we're on and we're off. Again, not bad, not wrong. But what is it like to have our meditation practice become a large enough space that on and off process is held? Because isn't that what our true nature inherently is doing? Isn't our true nature inherently holding that process? Or are we subscribing to this idea that our true nature is something we have to work really hard to find and get to and succeed at having? If we're following that program, we're going to be in trouble. There's inherent suffering in that program. There's inherent suffering in maintaining this concept of I need to seek. Now, with this, we have to hold that paradox. My first teacher used to talk about the importance of recognizing that we must long for, search for enlightenment harder than we've ever longed for, search for anything else in the entire universe, knowing that that longing and that searching is the very thing that will keep us from a direct experience of it. So that's one way we could look at it. From the kind of playful meditation we did tonight, what's being pointed at is something deeply inherent, as inherent and foundational as our own true nature. Thank you. Yes?
Thank you, it was a great sit. I don't know if this is even a question, it's more just your thoughts. You kind of started touching it. It seems like to me that we are going against our inherent nature to compartmentalize and seek order in everything. So like having an anchor that focuses your concentration is helpful for me. Whereas when you were asking us to kind of just open up, I felt like I was fighting something against me. And
can I make sure I heard you right? So when you tried a meditation where you're opening up a little bit, it felt like you were fighting something?
yes, like I was trying not to focus on a specific
Uh-huh.
trigger and just letting it be.
Yeah.
And that felt very unnatural.
Uh-huh.
And to me, that's very saying of what other parallels I see in my life, where like even when I'm at work or I'm with people, there's a certain way I need to conduct myself to feel as if I can be myself. But it seems here you're saying just being and accepting where you are will free you even more.
Well, I want to deeply honor your experience. It's incredibly important. It's your experience. So if you find that there's been something, how would you describe what happens for you when you're focusing on a concentration practice where you can really feel your attention narrow in on one direct object? How would you describe what happens for you with that?
It's kind of like a laser getting precise.
It's like a laser getting precise.
Like something
Beautiful.
focusing in, and it's almost metaphysical. I feel like I am having an out-of-body experience at some point.
Yeah.
And kind of that feels, it was very easy for me to learn that method versus just the open method that you're saying.
Yeah. Beautiful. So honor that. I have yet to find, I noticed Brett brought in a mantra practice of meditation. There's so many forms of meditation. I have learned to be in love with every form that I know. I just happen to adore forms. I adore the experience of the open emptiness in which all of these forms arise, and I get very compelled by all of the different forms. And the teens I work with are the best example of a population that's like always ready to just try a new form, like a new game, a new approach, a new way to explore this. So I really can't underline enough how much I hope this won't be a presentation that suggests that there's a way that's better than another, or, as you said, I think, no, please.
It's not that it was better. I felt I couldn't understand where the resistance was coming from.
Yeah.
And it seems more fear-based, and I love how you said that there needs to be more space for love.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to understand what that love means that will enable me to not be fearful,
Yeah.
be just free.
Yeah. Well, I just finished teaching a month-long online course, and I was struck by, after one of the experiences, one of the meditations in the course, I was surprised by how many people talked about how some aspect of fear arose in what they experienced as a new level of openness. So in my own experience, that is often an indicator that the ego had a lot of skin in the game with a method that it could have some control over. So if I have a tight, like the kind of practice that I really feel like in hindsight kind of dominated my monastic training. If I had the type of practice where at the end of the sit I could say, well, that was a very focused sit, or that wasn't a very focused sit, but I had some way to kind of measure my experience. You know, there's a lot in that for the ego. Can you feel how if I had a really unfocused sit, then I get to walk away feeling like shit about myself. And then if I had a very focused sit, I get to feel like, all right, you know, I'm getting somewhere with this. You know, so there's just this relationship. It's kind of dramatic. And if you're living in a monastery, there's really not much to do. So you create your own dramas, right? Like, this is juicy. What's happening in my meditation practice? This is where the juice is. Or whatever stories I'm making up about the other monks or whatever. The romance that I'm having with the cook. Mind you, we never made eye contact, but it was very involved. True story, there was actually, so just for the record, there were no romances at the monastery. That did not happen, okay? Celibacy, 8 years. Let's just get that on the table. But we did have a retreat once where some folks came to the retreat, and true story, 2 people got together. We learned about it after the fact, and I wasn't there, but one of the other monks, you know, was like, we saw you going into this person's hermitage, and he was like, I promise we didn't make eye contact. Well, that's one way to stick with the guidelines. Sex without eye contact. It technically does. We didn't say no sex when we said on retreat, no eye contact, right? We learned we had to spell this out a little bit better. Anyway, random aside. I have no idea where we were because now we're talking about sex at a monastery, but would you... It's kind of it is a juicier story. I think what we were talking about was the juice of the ego being involved, right? The drama of how I'm doing with my meditation practice, if I'm getting better, am I closer to enlightenment, am I farther away from enlightenment? Do I need to work harder? Am I not disciplined enough? Should I be sitting more? God, that other person is so much more evolved than me. Look how much they sit. It probably has to do with my lack of discipline. Is any of this familiar at all? It's just helpful to recognize, and I truly say this from my own experience, that when that energy dominated my practice, it was kind of a rough place to keep returning to. It's like always going home to an abusive partner. You know, there's some comfort in it. You know this guy's going to be mean to you, and you kind of know the role you play, and you know how he then says, I should have never said those things, or whatever. But there's familiarity, maybe. But it's not seeped in love. It's not seeped in openness. It's not infused with care. And from that place, our sitting isn't an opportunity to nourish our own experience of being, which is our most primary experience. It's more doing. It's more trying to get. It's more trying to accomplish. Which, don't we have enough of that in our day? May our meditation practice be a refuge from do more, be more, have more. May it be a refuge. What percent of your day are you caught in some version of do more, have more, be more? Just give me some percentages. 97, 110. What?
Asleep awake.
It could even be while you're asleep, right? Oh my God, I have to do more. Yeah. It's my first Zen teacher used to say, how you do anything is how you do everything. So if you've been doing your life from that place of be more, do more, have more, be better, fix, change, improve, it's very likely that we'll bring that to the cushion. I am not suggesting that folks leave here tonight and just only have this kind of meditation that's really following the sort of way that we approached it this evening. All concentration practices can come from this same nourished sense of being, and then those concentration practices will shift. It's really about inviting in more love. Letting yourself rest in love. How many of us don't want love? So just raise your hand. You don't want love. Did you just raise your hand?
No, my hand was just up.
Your hand was up. Okay. So we can just agree on that. We can just know that. Yeah. If I said to you, okay, a month from now, you have a choice. This is a freaky, weird game show that doesn't exist, okay? So a month from now, you have a choice. You can have gained an ability to be much more focused, or you can be flooded by unconditional love. It's not, I know, it doesn't make sense, it's not a real thing, but just play with me. Would anyone choose, I am going to be able to concentrate so much better? I'm sorry, I want to be overwhelmed by unconditional love. I want that unconditional love to seep into every relationship I have. I'm struggling with my father right now. My mom's been in the hospital. Family triggers. Ram Dass used to talk about, you think you're doing well in your spiritual practice, go home and visit your family. I think it was Ram Dass that used to say that. So I've had that test. I don't need to focus better while I'm talking to my dad about my mom's care. I need to love. That's the balm for what right now my habit is to just want to be in. You're wrong. I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to harden. Yeah. Thanks for bringing in your experience. Yes, sir.
I had an experience recently where I was in a meditation with a group of young people in a college setting, and a really wonderful monk who was in residence. And it was amazing because the love that you talked about was present in the way that he had us breathing. And it was so simple. It was like, there was something about that experience which was that concentrated focus, but it was amazing how I'll just never forget how he said, just breathe only 7 times. And then count again from 1. You know, he said it in a way that was just really, it was like, how come I've been in Zen practices where it's like breathe, count to 10, but it was just how he said it that made me feel this love.
There was something about his delivery that transmitted love for you. And you're able to see it wasn't in the words per se.
It was in the very simplicity of it. And I was sitting right next to him.
Mm-hmm.
So I just heard this voice, like, I don't know, it was something incredibly deep about a really simple thing.
Yeah.
And I felt like, wow, that's, this isn't complicated.
Yeah.
I complicate everything.
Anybody else? Let's again, show of hands. How many of you feel like you complicate things that later you're able to say, that didn't actually need to be complicated? Yeah, hallelujah. So thank God for those moments where things just become simple or clear, clean, easy.
I want to say one more thing, which is that I didn't recognize it as love until you were talking about it, though.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was thinking about, there was something just magical about that. But it was love.
Yeah.
It was, I don't know, that's very special to be able to talk, find that for me, just to be able to identify.
Well, it's special to know that is your experience of what it was, because that knowing you can name as an intention. When we have an intention, it can help us return to what we most long for. So if my intention is to have a deepened experience of unconditional love across the board in my life, then that intention can guide me. So as I move into a conversation with my Father, I can remember my intention. So naming that experience is important. Naming, that's love. And it came so, just to reflect to you, it came so simply. It was so clean. The beauty of that is that means you can return to it at any time. It's ever present. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Just an online question. You said something like weaving distraction into being.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you can elaborate on that.
Sure. This is just a new place I've been playing around, but so let's say I was in a car accident months ago. This is not a let's say, I was. So in sitting in this position, my right, it's really deep in my hip, that can just start to get a little enlivened, okay? So as it actually is in this moment. It's not so much so that I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be crippled if I don't change my position. It's just an enlivened place. So from one perspective, we could feel that sense of, that sensation as, this is a distraction. I'm going to note it, and then I'm going to come back to the breath, just as an example. So here's this distraction, I'll name it as pain arising, I'll note it as a distraction, and then I come back to the breath. There, again, as we've been talking about this evening, it can be a great service to have that kind of concentration that we're working with, that we're practicing. So my curiosity, just as a place to play in your meditation practice, is what happens when there's that sensation and I allow my direct experience of being, just being here. Like the way that when you're just in a hammock and nothing's going on, you're just being. Do we all love the experience of just being in a hammock when there's really nothing going on and you're just being? So what happens when that taste of beingness infuses what we normally might think of, or what the conditioned mind might call a distraction? What happens when that beingness weaves through something that we actually no longer call a distraction? It's simply sensation that's arising. Sensation that's arising in that open experience of being is less likely to quickly be called pain or something we need to move away from, or even just distraction. Distraction sort of implies it's kind of in my way, the way like a 4-year-old's distracting to me if I'm trying to do something in work. So I was about to say with me, but you're on the computer, so I can't say that. Maybe you can type in if that doesn't resonate. Thank you. What else? Any other live people in the room? Yes. Not that I love having people write in, but yeah.
I appreciate the perspective of bringing concentration to this kind of awareness, because it's something that I've kind of stumbled into in the last year of my own practice. And I was reminded of like sort of 3 different practices that I've played with. And one was I went on a meditation retreat with a teacher who had us focus on the mind state of loving kindness. And it was a very open, spacious place. And I also did a retreat with a different teacher from the Mahayana tradition who was working on resting in compassionate awareness as a way to combat something that I've experienced in probably the worst totality you can imagine of compassion fatigue. I've been an urban middle school teacher for over 10 years.
Bless you.
I got to the point where I was literally out of fucks to give.
You're out of what?
I was out of fucks to give.
Yeah, you'd hand them all the fucks away.
What's interesting is working through that, and I'm still teaching, and I still teach in a different scenario, in a slightly different situation, but like taking that into a set of teachings that I've been playing with, which is the Lojong slogans, and it reminded me so much of my own impression and my own practice with sort of resting in the nature of like alaya, this open primordial, just let it come up and let it pass with everything. And, you know, anything that's going on right now has permission to be here. It's all welcome. And I mean, easier said than done. Like tonight I'm dealing with my own gastrointestinal stuff, but which is uncomfortable, but I don't push things away as hard as I used to. But I wonder, and maybe this is a statement and maybe it's a question, but back to one of the earlier questions, like, because I did so much concentration practice up front, it has allowed me to take an experience like sitting in an open awareness or sitting in beingness and to stay focused there, you know, to stabilize it. And in terms of like sort of the things that are necessary to master to get there, it's like learning to stabilize your attention, right? And so, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was fun to see a technique that I actually use quite a bit, and anyone who has compassion fatigue, you can bounce back from it with this sort of sit, as long as you can recognize when there are parts of yourself that need tending. Continue.
Yeah, that you were able to see in your own experience that compassion fatigue was tended to in the nourishment of a practice like resting in compassionate awareness. That there's a way that the battery gets restored in a practice like that. Yeah, and I'm so glad you're bringing this in, because again, I cannot underline enough, in my own experience of practice, we need not see any of these things as separate. Like why when there's so many rich ways for us to experience what is most true foundationally in the universe, would we want to limit ourselves? And that's not the same thing as, you guys have all heard that analogy of the person's looking for water and they dig a little here and they dig a little here and they dig a little here and they never get water because they're just digging a little here. So it's not to say, it's not that I'm not pointing to that as an approach, because we get it. We get why that's problematic, right? Spiritual shopping. So what I appreciate and what I'm hearing you look at tonight is that you can begin to allow your meditation practice to be the place where you know yourself well enough to know what's needed in any given moment. So perhaps in a particular moment, when you're triggered, let's say, perhaps there's nothing more valuable than the mantra of, I love you, right? I just got slammed by the most intense self-hatred. But I can come back to the experience of, with every exhalation, I love you. I'm still here. I'm inhaling. As I exhale, I love you. That is a concentration practice. Has anyone ever tried that when you've been triggered? Please, take it home. Try it. You're triggered. Something's just come up. You're just totally thrown, whether it's because of the internal dialogue that's thrown you, or whether it's because of something that just happened at work. Watch what shifts when you turn all of your attention to a very pointed concentration practice of, as I inhale, I inhale. As I exhale, I love you. As I inhale, I inhale. And as I exhale, I love you. Just watch what shifts when when whatever the trigger is met with that concentration. Yeah, so thanks for speaking up. Yes?
For those of us who are challenged by reciting that phrase, I love you, perhaps...
Just those of us in the room. I mean, not you, but just other people who might have resistance. Your friend. You're asking for a friend, yes.
Who happens to be me. Is there a euphemistic way of engaging that while working to perhaps get to that?
Yeah, thank you so much. Would you be willing to tell me a little bit about what the resistance is? Not because I need it to be different, but because I just want to get to know you a little better in the moments that we have.
Sure. As briefly as possible. Part of it has to do with language, with using language that, at least as far as I feel about myself, is unearned and authentic.
Yeah.
Okay, but then there's also my conditioning.
Yeah.
Some of it is definitely based upon self-image.
Yeah. Can I pause you for a moment?
Yeah.
I want to suggest that first part is conditioning too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then there's also possibly a genetic component as well.
Oh, okay.
Like if I come from well, anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you naming that, because I'm told this is being recorded, and if it is available to people later, I hope you'll listen to this exchange again, because I hope that there will be a little bit of a crack in the story that love is something that, will you tell me your name? Jan. That love is something that Jan has to earn. Just not to push at that belief, not to try to crack it open, but just to shed a little light in the hopeful process of questioning. A phrase like, I love you, will always feel somewhat inauthentic if underlying it is a belief that I don't deserve it, that I haven't earned it. And I'll do one just because I seem to be on a kick of doing polls tonight. How many people in the room can relate to, I need to earn love? Okay, if you're not raising your hand, you're lying. Okay? So, and that's okay. We still love you.
Earn or deserve.
Earn or deserve.
Yeah.
It's just really worth deeply questioning that conditioning. If there were anyone else in this room that you were in conversation with, you'd probably have a much easier time seeing that they don't need to earn or deserve. They don't need to deserve loving. Oh. I suppose it's subject to opinion, isn't it? Well, according to Siri does not agree with me. No. You know, the real question in life is, do you want to trust your meditation teacher or do you want to trust Siri? It's really up to you. So, Siri doesn't think that we are inherently deserving of love. But I would assert that it's because our technology needs to upgrade. Our technology is not really evolved enough to recognize that we're inherently deserving of love, that we've never been separate from the experience of love, that we have this interesting, crazy capacity to perceive ourselves as separate from love. And that if we feel resistance, all that's going on is that we're identified with the conditioned mind. We're identified with the mind that says, you are separate and you are something that doesn't deserve love. So we can use the you don't deserve love as a flag that we've moved into an experience of that separation. That we're identified with that illusion of a separate self. That can actually become our invitation to come home. So you might enjoy this practice that we did tonight. You might take that on as a way of creeping up on a word that perhaps you're not ready to use yet, but perhaps you're ready to feel. Yeah, thank you.
I just need to second that, that I agree that the word love is, I have actually thought quite a bit about that word, love. And I have my own father, who just died in May.
Sorry.
When I would say, I love you, he would say, what is that supposed to mean? And,
It's like a loaded statement.
I kind of think that word love is not, it's not cutting it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I have great
Yeah.
yeah. Well, define that.
Yeah. So you are conditioned to have resistance to the word because the word is now loaded, and it is for a lot of us. It's really loaded. It has so much attached to it. What I would be interested in hearing about, if I were able to talk to you again soon, is what would happen if you just explored your experience. Forget about the words right now. Where in your life do you experience deep connection? What's another way that you would talk about unconditional love? Yeah.
Compassion.
Where's a place that you experience deep compassion? Not just like, oh, I have compassion for that guy that I just passed who fell down.
I can relate.
Okay, all right. So let that word be a little bit of a headline, but don't focus on the word, focus on the experience.
I can compassion you.
Great. Okay, great. What I want, I'll take it. I'll totally take it. But what I want is for you to compassion you.
Okay.
That's
better, much better.
That's what I want.
The word love is...
Great. Scrap it.
Thank you.
It's a word. It's a form.
I just wanted to say...
Yeah, absolutely. As I inhale, I'm here. I inhale. As I exhale, there is compassion.
Very good.
And say it knowing that you mean right here, right? It might be too much to be like, I love you, but you could say there is compassion here. Because the moment you say there's compassion here, there is compassion here. Do you know what I mean by that?
I want that.
It's right there. Awesome. Thank you. So I realized, yes, sir, that we are 1 minute away. So don't start with, I was born in... Okay.
loving kindness, lava, or compassion, lava, right? But compassion, or whatever, you make up your own word, because in a way, it's kind of like that helps me tone it and also not have that baggage of fear.
Sure.
And I don't know, it seems to me like there's a lot of mantras that are of that nature.
Sure. Whatever. Pick a word in a different language that actually means love, but you don't have to think that it means love. Whatever. Just pick a language. It doesn't matter to me. But what matters is that we explore the conditioning that has us believing that we don't deserve it, that we can't feel it, that we can't have it, that there's strings attached. What matters is that we bring conscious, compassionate attention to what that structure is. Because with that structure in place, our direct experience of love is veiled. Do you know what I mean by that? Yeah. So it's really, in practice, it's really worth bringing attention to the veil so that what's inherent and fundamental can be freed to be experienced fully. And what I'm proposing tonight is that experience is an experience of love. That when nothing else is obstructing our direct experience of being, we are actually resting in love or lava. All right.